Great presentations today. Jay and our Google presentation and Chris Ford before lunch. Tough to follow these great acts. I'm really pleased to be here and share with you a few details which I really hope will complement some of the points that we heard from Jay and from some of our other presenters. And I want to thank Mark as well for the opportunity to join you. I'm really pleased and honored. It's a great opportunity to be here and to share and to learn with you. When Mark and I had the chat about it last month, we talked about representing Silicon Valley, and I sure don't feel qualified to represent Silicon Valley, but I think I can do a fairly decent job of representing Cisco. I've been with the company for about 12 years, 14 if you count a couple of years as a consultant. So started with the company when it was about $600 million in revenue. We're about 60 now, billion. So we've seen quite an evolution and a culture change during the course of those years. My job over that time has really been responsible and chartered with this idea of organizational transformation, culture change, how to drive collaboration, how to drive development, how to drive retention, these kinds of topics. And so I'm really pleased to talk to you about a little bit about what I've been doing over the past four or 5 years, which is to lead a knowledge program within our services business and looking at some of the aspects around people and process and the technology aspect as well. My goal is to provide a little food for thought, for you to take back to your programs ideally. If I have some elements of our program, of our framework for addressing the people, the process, and the tools aspect, that would be a good result, and I hope that we can accomplish that goal during the course of the next few minutes. The theme that I've got here is the egg there that you notice, and that really, to me, represents what's possible in an organization when it comes to knowledge sharing and the collective knowledge that exists in an organization. You have a tremendous amount of talent in certainly in our services organization, and I would suggest obviously your organizations as well. And how are you going about addressing the harvesting, the leveraging of that knowledge, the reusing of that intellectual capital to benefit your customers, to benefit your suppliers, to benefit your employees? And what are you doing to tap into the employees' passion, their dedication, their willingness to sacrifice, and their willingness to apply themselves to go above and beyond? Our attempt within our program is to look at ways that we can tap into that golden nugget, if you will, that collective insight and knowledge within the organization. And so that would be my question to you that I would ask you to think about. And also let us know how you think we're doing after I share with you a total of about 12 slides. I'm going to keep it fairly short. Just give you a little bit of a flyby as to our program, some of the major elements of what we're trying to do. And let me know where you think we have some challenges. We're certainly looking to evolve our model. We've been doing it again for only about 5 years. Many of you have been doing it and have been in organizations that have been doing it for 2 or 3 times, if not longer than that. And so we're interested in evolving, and whatever I can pick up from you is going to be a win. So, and I already have, certainly during the course of the discussions. We talked a little bit before lunch about driving a KM culture, and so this will really be an attempt to give you a flavor of one company's attempt to drive a KM culture, some of the processes that we're putting in place. Brief agenda, just one item there. I'm going to keep it simple. Knowledge management infrastructure, our framework for addressing the people, the process, and the tools within our services division at Cisco. And the services division incorporates the advanced services and our technical services. You can think of it as the preparing, the planning, the design, the implementing, the operating, and the operationalizing of a network. You have companies that invest a lot of money in this technology, and what we're trying to do within advanced services is to deliver those services around preparing, planning, design, implement, operate, and operationalize those networks as effectively as possible. So our goal as a services organization is to drive world-class networks, to optimize those networks, to make them self-healing, to remediate any issues and repair them, to make sure that they're designed from scratch with the right architectural type input, Our consulting organization is made up of about 3,500 consultants who are some of the more knowledgeable individuals in the world around the different technologies that we provide support around. And we also leverage our partner organization, which is tens of thousands of individuals worldwide. And so you can think of our organization a little bit like IBM Global Services, perhaps, although not nearly as large because we are leveraged to our partners. Just a quick note, we've talked about culture, we've talked about the importance of trust during the course of the last couple days. The only sentence I'd call your attention to would be the top, and it's just an email that came last night, and I just plugged it in because I thought it was important. Our leadership's, and specifically our CEO's goal is to continue promoting a culture that not only produces results, but ensures that Cisco is getting recognized or is recognized as one of the most generous companies in the world. And we hear that all the time in the company. I think it's an important point when we're trying to drive this idea of a KM culture and trying to drive individuals to transform their behaviors and capture their knowledge and share their knowledge proactively. And so one of the things that we hear all the time and that we see as well are stories of employees that are giving back. We're asked to volunteer our time 2 to 4 days per year at a variety of nonprofits that the company supports and partners with. So it's just a little bit of a background information that helps, I think, understand our culture. We also do a lot of technology, and a lot of technology around collaboration. One of the great or the interesting areas that we're addressing right now is really driving collaboration. We are putting together tools and technologies such as telepresence here, which is a very interesting way to drive collaboration, a lifelike type meeting with individuals from any other office around the world that might have this telepresence, which all of our major offices do, and increasingly our partners and customers are adopting as well. Really enables and enhances the communications that might not be as effective in terms of a conference call. Certainly, you can really work with an individual like it's an in-person type meeting. And so that's something that's really increasing in importance within Cisco, is the importance of how can we collaborate more effectively as an organization. We heard from Rick around this idea of a command and control, and that you might hear about swim lanes, that's not my job, or it's not in my swim lane. We don't hear that a lot within our organization. We hear a lot about the different teams we're trying to partner with and the different groups that we want to connect with, and that's really, I think, a result of the emphasis around collaboration. And we have a lot of tools. I just wanted to throw one up, but we certainly do a lot with respect to, of course, the web conferencing, instant messaging, the wikis, and the blogs. We have a lot of senior leaders that participate and put video blogs together on their home pages, so a lot of executive support for that. And the technology is something that we're really trying to drive in terms of driving collaboration. We also have a collaboration award within the company, and so the company promotes and produces a collaboration program that goes out every quarter, and employees are asked to participate in that as well. So really just kind of an overall emphasis and a priority around collaboration.
Next, a quick question about telepresence.
Please do.
Yeah. Impressive. I've seen it work. Has Cisco done anything with being able to capture what happens in a telepresence session so you can go grab it later and pull it back? I've been in a telepresence session, and it's impressive stuff. I haven't seen whether or not you can pull it later, which would be knowledge management. A lot of knowledge gets created in those sessions.
Yeah, stay tuned. I've got a slide, around the 7th or 8th slide from now. We'll cover that. Yeah, but yes, we are doing some work in that area. Packet analysis is the area. So within our services group, we have a program to drive knowledge management for services, and really just want to call your attention to the areas in red if you can see those. These are the areas that really are important and paramount for us to show value for. Being able to help the organization, the customers, meet their goals. So all about helping the customers drive configuration and compliance, to meet their needs for world-class networks, to drive customer satisfaction, which we track every year. We track very strongly. In fact, it's tied to everybody's compensation as well. The second is increasing effectiveness, so increasing our margins by increasing our overall productivity. We heard from Chris before lunch around the importance of embedding the work within a certain process, and being able to show an improved process is something that we look to do as well in terms of showing a reduced time to create a deliverable, to create a deliverable that results in fewer conflicting type recommendations and deliver a deliverable in less time. So being able to create more capacity with the employee base. And then finally, just being able to help our network consulting engineers, NCEs, these are the consultants that go out with various customer engagements and help them. More challenging work, more opportunities to learn and grow. These individuals, as you can guess, are really motivated by technology challenges, and they really are in a position where if they collaborate and learn and grow, they can really get themselves exposed to new technologies, new opportunities to learn, more development. And so this is something that we look to provide them as well on a regular basis. The point at the bottom there is important as well, just in terms of the emphasis of the company towards collaboration and collaborative relationships. It was put out by a study, The Economist 2020, a foresight study. It came out about 2 years ago, and it's worth checking out if you haven't had a chance, if you're trying to justify knowledge management within your organizations a little bit. The study looked at a number of different areas around human capital management and process improvement and a variety of others. And they studied and surveyed 1,600 executives across Europe, North America, APAC, etc. And these are mostly C-level executives, and looked at really what was the opportunity for driving organizational effectiveness and organizational results over the course of the next 15 years. And knowledge management came out as the single most important aspect according to that study. So pretty interesting business justification from a KM point of view. Okay, so we saw the objective of our program, and I'll take you through just a little bit about the infrastructure, and we won't have time to go into all the details around the governance and around the security and around metadata tagging and all of the different implications of the architectural elements. I'll take you through just 3 elements for the sake of time. From a content point of view, we have a content management program, as you can probably imagine, and the content goes through a certification process where our communities are the trusted sources for vetting that content, for approving the content, for making sure that it gets updated and making sure that it gets scrubbed, making sure that it's up to date, if there are any diagrams in it, any network type topologies, that they're up to date, that they're current. And so the virtual teams or communities, we call them both, are the organizations that really are critical for certifying that content, certifying that knowledge, it's codified knowledge. And we'll hear in a few minutes around what we're doing to evolve from that, because we think we have some interesting approaches to taking content to the next level in terms of making it more agile and making it more receptive to quick modification and quick time to market. But the content in its current form is one that goes through the process. You can see a workflow here. We have a web-based workflow that enables the communities to assign leaders to review the content and to send it through and have it be trusted content. So in our overall database, if you will, of content, we may have 200,000 documents that are in that, but we have about 2,000 or just a small percentage that are actually certified as leading practices content that go through this process of certification, end of life, updating, and then live on in this way as certified content. Our goal as an organization is to automate the expertise of our technology specialists. They are on the front lines. They're working with customers in a variety of deliverables around architectural, planning, design, implementation, and operationalizing their networks. If you just look on the far side there, you've got our members of our communities that are the experts that are organized by different areas of technology that we'll see on the next slide around community structure. But we ask them to contribute their ideas, and they come up with all kinds of ideas. They're working with customers, they're learning on a daily basis, they're figuring things out. And so we ask them to go in and create some ideas that will help their situation, but then also be able to optimize the service delivery for the next customer. So, for instance, they might come up with some technology rule that might be something along the lines of disable spanning tree on layer 3 switches. And so they'll say, okay, that's a really good rule. It works in my network with my customer, and I think it should be something that all customers should be given access to. And so they'll submit the rule, and it will be codified in a way that when all of the data comes from customers, because we are collecting it on our end, We put the boxes out, we collect data, it's all encrypted, and not every customer supports that or allows that. Specifically, federal government, some of the defense contracting situations have some challenges with that. But we have the ability to collect a lot of data from customers around how many devices they're operating, what kind of software they're running, and what can they do to improve their networks. Well, we compare it against the rules and the best practice ideas that have been submitted compared to the data that's coming in, and we can come back to that customer with a best practice report and make that network consulting engineer on the front lines a real hero by giving them the access for all of the ideas that have come in worldwide for that particular customer's benefit. And that's something that we, over time, have seen a lot of improvements in terms of service quality, in terms of customer success, in terms of the compliance of customer networks, just by having the database of rules and having the regular contributions from our consultants sharing their ideas and sharing their input, and then having them codified and be available for best practice reports for our customer base. You can see the different types of rules that are created having to do with syslog or the configuration best practices for a particular type of technology. It might be a customer config, or it might be an audit. We do a lot of audits of our customer networks. And so it really does involve and result in a report that goes out to customers to help us with that network remediation. The key for our intellectual capital contribution, whether it's content or whether it's rules, as we just saw, are the virtual teams or the communities. And so we have, within our services group, 23 different virtual teams. We have them evolving, and we have new ones coming online on a quarterly basis. And they're organized typically by technology, so routing and switching and wireless and security and IP telephony, storage, mobile wireless, a variety of technologies, and also by vertical markets as well. Financial and healthcare and energy services are increasingly organizing to share knowledge as a vertical segment. And so we have a structure that we promote as part of our program to help the teams collaborate. So we have typically an individual who will come in as a lead for that virtual team, a sponsor manager as we call them, and they will champion the team. They'll go out and do some recruiting for the leads for that position, who are going to be the developers of the intellectual capital. Typically that would involve a lead for someone to develop the rules that I mentioned, or for the content would be another lead on the team as well. And we typically have an executive sponsor who would really provide some executive level buy-in, who might provide some visibility, who might sit in on meetings. We typically will bring in our executive sponsors twice a year, provide some outputs for the virtual team, and so that executive sponsor is really critical as well. And then we have a variety of participants. Not everybody has to be an active lead at any given time. They might rotate into a certain role, they might rotate out. You can see the nucleus of the community there in yellow, and of course the rest of the community. And we even have some individuals outside the community that might plug in for a certain period of time, maybe join the meeting, maybe they're from the development organization or from one of our business units and participate as an on-duty basis.
Could you explain some of the abbreviations you have there, like RBIC, CBIC?
Yeah, sorry. The rules-based intellectual capital is our rule program where we have rules that get codified and then get created into our network profile supporting capability that drive customer success through better optimized networks, better service quality. And then the CBIC is the content, the documents. These are the Word documents, the Visio diagrams, the architectural type topologies, and this is content-based intellectual capital. So these are the two kind of foundations, if you will, of our intellectual capital that the communities are responsible for developing.
Question?
Please.
Does this represent a cross-section across different product groups, or is it by product group or by division? Or how are these organized?
Yeah, so they're organized by technology. So we have a variety of technologies within the organization, both mature technologies. So some of our bread and butter technologies are the routing and the switching, and some of our technologies that go back, legacy type technologies. But we also have a variety of emerging technologies, storage, wireless, IP telephony, WiMAX, some new technologies that are coming online. So we have communities that organize both in mature technologies, some of the emerging technologies, as well as some of the vertical market segments as well, financial services, healthcare, energy, government, etc.
And can you talk to the process about how all of those findings from each community of practice gets rolled up into an organizational learning?
So the organizational learning is the intellectual capital. So the communities are chartered with developing the intellectual capital. That's really the reason that they exist, although they can certainly be available as a forum for learning. They work together, they meet typically bi-weekly. And so the communities are there to develop the intellectual capital to support that area of technology. So for instance, let's just take the campus switching area of technology. So that community will be there to create the rules, create a portfolio of rules, so that the team might get together and look at, well, what are customers seeing that maybe we're not providing? What are some of the holes in our quality, some of the gaps in our network remediation reports that maybe we could develop some rules for, or develop some white papers for? All of these technologies, as you can guess, are really evolving and changing. So what's true today, a document that exists today to support a customer is really going to be changing over 6 months, 2-3 quarters. And so the group really does a gap analysis of, let's look at all the areas that we do business in, the prepare, the plan, the design, the implement, the operate and operationalize of a network. And so let's look at the P or the D or the I or the O. And where are we missing content that would support that customer? We have a lot of check boxes in the P and the D and the I, but let's look at further down. And we don't have any content that's really trusted, that's valid content. So let's focus our efforts on creating that content. So the virtual team will do that content matrix, a little gap analysis, and put together a content strategy that will meet the needs of the customer.
Doug? Yeah, I actually have a couple questions for you. How do you decide what groups to get started? How does that decision process happen?
It's an interesting question. It doesn't always happen the same way every time. Sometimes they'll come to our group and say, hey, just last month, cable. We're seeing a lot of need to organize more effectively in the cable space. We're seeing a lot of new customer deployments of this type of broadband type implementations. But we don't have a lot of a handle on who the individuals are worldwide who can support the effort. So can you help us put together a community so we can pull together these experts? We can bring in some experts from the different parts of the company as well as organize ourselves. We can put together a portfolio of content or rules that will start to drive better service quality. So it's not so haphazard and not so informally done, because without the organization of the community, it tends to be a little bit informal, a little ad hoc. And by default, people will rely on their own informal networks. And that's one of the problems that we've had historically is people rely on their own informal networks, which is great when we were a very small company 12 years ago. But as we've grown and expanded and have very aggressive requirements for customer satisfaction success, you can't operate that way and thrive as an organization.
Okay, now Cisco, how many employees Cisco has?
60,000.
60,000 worldwide.
That's right.
You have community practice spread all across the world.
Yes.
Right? A lot of them have customers both internal and external.
Yes.
Right? Now how does this structure work worldwide?
This is not a worldwide company community program. It's for our services group. So it's a services group of about 3,500 to 3,800 consultants. Worldwide, we have consulting engineers across all of our theaters. And so the community program is made up of these 23 communities that support the technologies for all of our engagements worldwide that might happen. And so we ask them to create the intellectual capital so that as an individual in the UK or Beijing or Sao Paulo are supporting customers in an emerging market or a mature market, they have the benefit and can leverage that knowledge that's been done so that the lessons that have been learned at Bank of America can be applied to Bank of China.
So how does that infrastructure design, the backbone of this?
So we have architecture in terms of the databases, the repository. We have a content management system, which is based on an Oracle platform. We've done a lot of work to customize that. We have an infrastructure to support the integration of our rules as well. And so these are sent through our rule engine and created into the proper repository as well, which get submitted into best practice reports that can go out to customers.
So there's a hierarchy of these, there's a hierarchy involved in this, right?
Say more about hierarchy. What do you mean?
In other words, when an event happens and there's learning there, that gets passed on through this process to the next layers, where they discriminate in terms of where this knowledge is going to eventually either be blocked or discriminated, teased out, and then sent to a repository of some sort, some location.
Yeah, that's certainly the idea. That's the reason our group exists. That's the reason we were funded 4 or 5 years ago, was to eliminate some of these situations that we would hear, that these consulting engineers would do all this work to find out how to support their customers, spend all this time to create a high-level design or a low-level network design. Low-level network design can take 3, 4, 5 months to create. That's a lot of time and effort. And then they would find out that the person, not just in the next theater or 2 countries over, but the next cube had just done that 6 weeks ago. And so why couldn't they leverage what that engineer had just done? Well, there's no mechanism. And so maybe through an informal network, maybe it could have happened. But our team was funded to start to try to eliminate some of these instances of inefficiency or redundant work. And so we asked our engineers to go check out the content that exists in our repository, our leading practice content, or when they're creating a best practice report or an audit for their customer, make sure that it's inclusive of all of the other ideas that have been submitted. So it's an attempt to really look at how we can eliminate some of this redundancy. We're still working on it, but it's really
so one of the interviews with John Chambers, he was basically discussing that we're really transforming the Cisco to a network collaborative system. But the challenge that Cisco is facing is building the infrastructure to back up these communities of interest and be able to get good yields in terms of effective innovation that they can use it. And he wasn't really clear, didn't go into much details in terms of how that infrastructure works. And this is in a shadow of a sort of a decentralized, product-driven plumbing business, right? Where a lot of this information get circled or passed on to different divisions, and then basically they get harvested in different locations based on the need. Because some of the customer relations or customer service knowledge which is generated has significance in research and development and other components of the organization, and it's not basically, doesn't belong to the customer service or customer relations group themselves. Is that what he's talking about? I mean, I'm looking at the bigger picture in terms of how this thing goes.
Yeah, he certainly has talked a lot about this collaboration infrastructure, and it has a lot of implications for the organization in terms of the type of processes, the type of way that we're set up as an organization. Typically, or traditionally, we were set up as a traditional command and control type organization, but we're really trying to evolve towards one that's much more connected and collaborative. And we've, as one example, created more business councils as opposed to an individual who heads up our development organization overseeing all of our technology organizations. It's a council. It's a council made up of different individuals across probably 10 or 12 different areas. And so instead of having that kind of command and control area, it's really done more by collaborative and consensus, which has some challenges as well when you try to drive towards a decision maybe, but it really is an attempt to start to look at how can we drive more collaboration into our business model.
Now he's claiming that he can pick up his speed through this kind of a process and infrastructure. In other words, he can get to the market and produce product and services quicker than the competitors. But intuitively, because it has some inherent chaos involved in this thing, some of the decisions don't get slowed down. So to me, it's a bit murky. Could you explain that to me? How can you build up the speed?
Well, our goal, back to that first slide, if we can unlock, if we can leverage and harness our intellectual capital assets within an organization, that's going to lead to better decision making. That's what our goal is, to be able to make better, more effective decisions and get product to market and do all of these kinds of things. And so the collaboration infrastructure, the boards and councils, are really an attempt to drive better decision making, better information sharing across organizations, better solutions, the better providing of solutions as an organization. So instead of providing a lot of different point products that look like point products to a customer and looking like 6 or 7 different companies are supporting them, trying to cut across and create an overall solution that ties together the different aspects, whether it's the wireless, the storage, or the IP telephony aspects of it, and be able to create more of a solution, more of a horizontal approach, and actually tasking individuals and creating the right incentives and the right accountability for an overall solution approach. So we heard yesterday about the program manager and the fact that the program manager doesn't necessarily have the incentives. So you have a lot of program managers that might not have that overall view. Well, what about creating more of a portfolio manager that has the accountability for all of those various programs that can start to bring these teams together and create a single look and feel for the customer? So this is one example of what we're trying to do to create more of that horizontal approach. Doug?
Yeah, it seems like you bringing more of the decision-making process down to the point of impact, which will bring speed, versus going up a chain of command. But my question is this: is it a common database or system that has all of your customer needs or problems that you're working on in a central location? Like if I'm a customer and I say, hey, I got a problem with this, do you have a solution for this? Is that customer opportunity put into some system that everybody in the organization can see?
Everybody, that's probably not happening. From the services side of the business, we have a repository where the services consulting engineers can access it, but nobody else can. We don't want the sales organization to tap into the services business database. There's a lot of IP challenges around that, and so we lock it down for that part of the business. And the development organization has its own set of access to the various information. So we don't have an overall enterprise-wide solution, but we also have solutions that are custom for different parts of the business, like our services business. The charter of the communities is to add value towards these areas that we talked about, the ability to improve customer success, customer network optimization, and the ability to do all of these things around employee productivity and process improvement. Certainly, knowledge, capture, share, and reuse is a big one. It's a mantra that we hear and advocate and evangelize all the time. So what are the employees, what are the community members doing to capture, share, and reuse their knowledge? And so this is something that we advocate as one of the benefits of the community involvement, being able to share their knowledge and being able to benefit as well. So having access to experts, opportunity to learn, opportunity to grow, and chance to get better exposure and better technology development. The AS delivery support, so our advanced services delivery support. So our communities really support the delivery of our services, being able to support a more consistent delivery. So what we're doing in one theater is consistent with what we're doing in another. A lesson that we're learning in one country, we can apply it worldwide, and being able to support more consistent delivery, reduce some of these conflicting recommendations, reduce some of these instances of a customer getting a low-level design that isn't absolutely top-notch and representative of everything that we know in the organization. Customers should have the benefit of everything we know. Why can't we give that to them? Innovation and tools input as well. So the community members are the best in our organization. I mean, they're certainly our subject matter experts. So being able to rely on them to provide input and insight into our tools. How can we make our tools even more effective? How can we make our delivery mechanisms more effective for promoting customer success? So our subject matter experts within our communities are tasked with providing that input and being able to make us a better organization. The collaboration and learning, so being able to work with customers to do a transfer TOI, to work with our field organization are typically things that our communities will do on a regular basis as well. So not just the content creation or not just the development of the rules intellectual capital, but supporting our field, supporting our customers in certain symposium, for instance, a variety of different activities that they can get involved in that will drive better productivity or better delivery quality for our customers. And then finally, just better learning and development too. So we talk to our subject matter experts. We support them as in their contributions to the organization. We often see them increase in responsibility as a result of participating in the community. They've taken on a leadership role in the community. They're visible. They're updating our executives. They're promoting and coordinating and perhaps cheerleading the intellectual capital development with their team. And oftentimes we see that that leads to an increase in responsibility. Maybe they'll take on the sponsor manager role the next month. Maybe they'll take on a position of greater responsibility in their team. And so this is something that we constantly really go back to the virtual teams and let them know, here are some of the benefits of participating in the program. No need to review all of this other than it really is just an output for our virtual teams where we twice a year will go out to our executive sponsors and just give them updates. Here's what the community is doing for you, doing for the organization. Here's how it's supporting the organizational success. Here's how it's making itself relevant to the delivery of our services. And so each virtual team will come back and talk through some of the successes, some of the areas of focus, maybe some of the challenges. But typically you'll see some focus on content development, intellectual capital contributions or knowledge contributions. You'll see typically some stats or metrics around number of rules, the number of training sessions that they've held, maybe some new collateral or a new document that they've created, and perhaps maybe a new field training or maybe some wiki collateral that's been developed. We're also evolving our intellectual capital as well. Having just large monolithic documents is not necessarily the answer. So we're really looking at how we can make our knowledge more agile, how we can get our knowledge out to market more quickly. And so we're creating and have an application in place. And it really is almost a wikitized version of our leading practice or our document application, where we can take knowledge in its most basic form, we call it in its atomic form, the knowledge components. It might just be one page. A best practice document might be well over 100 pages with another 100 pages of diagrams. We have our IC, our intellectual capital nuggets, really just knowledge in its most basic form, where the engineer can go and create, through compiling a variety of different nuggets, the deliverable that they need, that they can really take pieces a la carte and create the document that they really need for their customer. And they can also upload documents or upload nuggets much more readily than going through the process to certify and vet the content through the community program. Although we do have some mechanisms to certify nuggets as well, it's a different level, or the bar is at a different level. So we're really encouraging the uploading and the compiling of these nuggets as a way to create more agile delivery and to create better consistency in our delivery as well, and better productivity. We did a business case to look at the investment for this application, and we went out to our consultants and we asked them, what is the amount of time that you're doing to create a deliverable, and how much of that is custom and specific to that customer, and how much of that is more static intellectual capital, not dynamic or not custom, but something that is kind of the same from customer to customer and could be really applied itself to this type of application. And the answer we got back was really startling in that we saw was an opportunity to get about 60% of any deliverable. We took about the top 10 deliverable types, and we found almost 60% was lending itself towards reuse in a way that we could have supported by an application. And so the idea of making knowledge reuse more pervasive in the organization and making it easier to reuse the intellectual capital was something that drove this. and continues to drive as well. We're piloting a new technology developed internally within one of our business units. It's called the Network Collaboration Business Unit, and this technology is it exists to analyze packets within the network. We, of course, have a lot of the infrastructure, the pipes taking traffic from different points, and we're able to analyze the packets, the traffic that flows, whether it's in documents or on websites or in diagrams, etc., and being able to look at what are some of the patterns that this traffic might suggest. What are some of the areas of expertise that this type of network traffic might suggest, and be able to build profiles or build expertise suggestions for individuals is something that we're having piloted right now within our organization. And so it's an interesting idea because it takes the employee out of the equation. We heard yesterday how, they're time constrained, they don't have time to update their profiles, it's just not going to happen. We've tried it as well, and it doesn't happen. So taking their need to apply themselves towards updating their profile is not something that's required. All they have to do is opt in. If they opt in, all of their traffic that flows internally within the intranet, not their external traffic, not what they're talking about with their friends and family, but just traffic that flows on the intranet, it's tagged against we have about 5,000 to 7,000 different terms. So we apply different tags based on the type of analysis that's done. The packets are sniffed or analyzed, and we can go and build an expertise profile on them. They can log on to the portal and find out who's been rated as an expert or otherwise in the organization. These are the suggestions that come. Everybody has to go in and validate the suggestions that the system is giving them. If they are being viewed as an expert in technology, XYZ, they'll be asked to validate that, and then it will go on the portal where if somebody has a question, they can see if that person is online, they've been assessed at this level, and the person can ask that question. So it's a way to really drive better expertise location and have it be done in the workflow based on the traffic within documents and websites and things like that. So it really is an attempt to take enterprise search and corporate directories, which we have, but to make it more dynamic, drive better collaboration and better connection, and accelerate those connections. Rick?
So I'm going to try to ask my question again in a different context here, because I think this is where you said you were going to be talking about.
Exactly.
One of the toughest problems in knowledge management is to capture unstructured flows of information. Phone calls, digital presence, video conferences, emails. Have you guys made any progress on that? Because it's a tough problem. That's where most of the real knowledge in the organization ends up sitting.
Yeah, it is a big problem, and it's something that we are actively looking at. We certainly haven't solved it. We're getting a little closer, I think, with this and being able to analyze some of the packets and be able to see some of the expertise that comes from that. We're looking at mining traffic that comes from discussion forums and from some of the wiki traffic as well. We have within our content management and our delivery management system the ability for case requests to go out to some of our consultants, and we can track that data. So who's contributing to the cases, who's answering the cases on a regular basis, who's taking the time to solve some of these cases. So we have reports within our delivery systems that allow us to capture that. And so we'll see in just a minute some of the metrics that we capture within our program, and they're pretty good metrics, but it's not the whole story. There's a lot more, like you suggest, around how knowledge is flowing in the organization, and so that when we assess an employee's contributions, we always qualify it by saying, okay, here are the contributions that are coming as we measure them. It might be uploads, it might be downloads, it might be contributions to our tools, our systems, but it's not the end of the story. They might be contributing VODs, there might be knowledge sharing on these discussion forums that we're not capturing. And so we always try to qualify it when we provide that. We do have some other mechanisms, like some of our video databases now are searchable to the spoken word, so we're able to capitalize on some of that traffic. But when it comes to phone calls and informal hallway chats, we're not there yet.
So one more just
Yeah.
following. One of the biggest problems I've seen is the loss of information that's in like a PowerPoint presentation, right? Because most organizations, their PowerPoint presentations are on individual desktops. And so the organization usually doesn't have the ability to capture all those zillions of white papers or presentations or slides that are created. They're lost, essentially, except to the authors and a small number of people that end up getting it emailed to them. Do you guys operate the same way everybody else does, or do you have a more structured way to handle internal presentation material so that you can get at it?
We ask them to take it off their hard drive. We ask them, and we'll see here in just a second, some of the ways that we encourage it to have those contributions happen on a regular basis. So we have some of the mechanisms. We have the workflow to certify it, but that doesn't get the job done. They have to actually nominate it. They have to go in and upload it. And so unless they're motivated to do so, it kind of goes back to this behavior change. Why are they going to be motivated to do so? So that's what we'll see in just a second. Which is a good segue for the idea of accountability and behavior change. This is just one attempt. This is one of our virtual teams, and we don't have a organizational-wide approach to driving accountability, but we have some general guidelines that we suggest out to the various teams to promote within their individual teams. It's maybe a little bit difficult to see, but the goal is to contribute the intellectual capital, to transfer knowledge on a regular basis, to take those PowerPoint presentations and to upload them, to nominate them, to make them available to the knowledge base. And we have requirements within performance plans for these employees to do that on a regular basis. And so we just went through that process over the last couple months. And for this particular group, we had certain grades. So within our corporation, we have lower level grades maybe being from 6 to 10 or 8 to 10. And then we have the higher level grades being from 11 to 12. And you can see a higher expectation for knowledge contributions as you get higher in the organization or as you're a more senior contributor. The expectation is you better be contributing your knowledge. You better be taking that knowledge off of your hard drive. You better be mentoring others in the organization. And if you want to get that promotion, if you want to be eligible for this better set of incentives or consideration for promotion or consideration for a development opportunity, you really should be considering developing or contributing that knowledge to the knowledge base. We have our review process. It's a five-tier model where an X is the highest level, and E is average, and an E plus is right in between. Those are the top three. And so we ask for a certain set of knowledge contributions to occur before somebody could really realistically be considered for some of those higher level ratings, an X or an E plus. Now, of course, again, we qualify to go back. Now, these are just the intellectual capital contributions, and the manager needs to hold those in context of all the other contributions that are occurring. The individual might be working on 6 customer escalations and working in a variety of different areas, and they haven't had time or they haven't had the ability to contribute, and the manager happens to know that. So they're in the best position to make that call. But the manager should also know that if the employee is in a position to share their knowledge and to upload their content or to develop a rule or to contribute to the community, and they haven't done so, then that manager should hold that and take that into account in forming that overall assessment for the employee. And so we drive some of these accountability mechanisms to help the managers make that overall assessment in the course of their review of their employee and the development plan for that employee for the next year.
How's that working for you?
Yeah, I was thinking this is a tough problem.
It's a tough problem. I'd say we're getting some very good traction in some groups, and in some groups we haven't got much traction at all. So we're seeing a spread or a range of different responses and adoption, if you will. So some of our real high star communities, if you will, we've seen some real great traction, but we're really looking to take it to the next level and have it be adopted at more of an organizational level. So that's one of our priorities for next year.
Grades we had in the previous chart, those are individuals or for communities?
Individuals, yeah. We do assess communities on a quarterly basis as well and provide rankings so that individuals, executive sponsors as one, would see how the community has participated and how they contributed. So we'll know who the top contributors are for these rules for content. And so we do publicize those and make those available to the organization. And you'd be surprised, it really does motivate these individuals to see how they are faring. They often don't know how they stack up or their performance compares to other communities, and they really like to see how they're doing against other communities in the organization. So they do respond to that.
Yeah. I have a question in regard to the last slide too. I work for a management consulting firm, and one of our biggest challenges is what we've been discussing today, and that is capturing that information that resides within the individual, because once they leave the company, that information goes with them. What form does your knowledge contributions take, typically from individuals? And I mean, it's a fascinating subject because it relates to, the previous topic was about knowledge flows. This is about capturing that information. How do you capture that information that's tacit knowledge, and what form does that take?
Yeah. So we have what we call our real champions, our stakeholders who contribute on a regular basis, on an ongoing basis. And what we would do without them, sometimes I wonder, because they're the regular contributors, they're consistent, they're reliable. And what if they did play? So what we try to do is we try to rotate them out of some of the roles that they're in and just have another individual take on that role for a year, so that we're not so reliant and dependent on their contributions, because it does get to be an exposure issue where if we lose them, if they retire, if they go elsewhere, if they choose to move on to a different group, it really does put us in a precarious position. So I don't know that we have anything that's been completely systematized or structured, but we do certainly make a note on an annual basis who are our various leaders in the organization, what do we need to do to avoid this situation where we're at a single point of failure, where we would lose that talent and lose the intellectual capital that they bring with them. So looking at rotations annually, and we bring the team together and look at who we need to move around within our subject matter expert, our stakeholder community. So that would be the main thing. Otherwise, really just having them participate and mentor others in the organization. So if we have somebody participating from APAC who's working on 7 different virtual teams, so they conduit to the rest of the theater, they're sharing information constantly. What are we doing to have that person take somebody else under their wing, have them mentor somebody else, so that if that person does move on, we don't lose all of those connections like we saw in Jay's diagram, and that person is such a conduit for the rest of the organization. So it's more of just looked at on a case-by-case basis annually, and really look at where do we need to rotate, where do we need to mentor, and where do we need to just drive nominations or content from that individual if we haven't seen it. But typically the individuals who are contributing on a regular basis are nominating content and contributing their knowledge, so it's usually not that's a factor.
Okay, thank you.
How are you facing challenges such as in privacy, HR privacy issues with regard to concerning expert profile, like, for instance, status of an individual being a veteran or something like that, or in terms of posting that information out there?
Yeah, we have a lot of security concerns, of course, in a lot of different areas around our knowledge, and so we won't go into a lot of detail now, but at least with that, with the network collaboration product, they have to opt in, so they have to sign something that allows their traffic to be analyzed and to be reviewed. But that's something that VU is certainly looking at. I think we try to err on the side of being overcautious and making sure that they know that here's what we're doing, here's the type of traffic that we're capturing, and it's only limited to this type of traffic. Maybe we could get more information if we expose it to a larger type of traffic, but we really, I think, try to contain it. Go really over on the restrictions or having them opt in. In terms of some of the other security type implications of content management, certainly we need to make sure that the content is scrubbed on a regular basis. Any content that goes out to the customer cannot have any IP addresses or network diagrams from any other customer. I mean, it has to be devoid of any kind of references. So we have individuals who are paid and responsible and accountable for scrubbing that content before it would be put into another customer's hands. And we also make sure that the consulting engineers know as well. This is something that's, at the end of the day, that they need to be accountable for as well, that they need to be responsible for the content that they're sharing. So even though we encourage regular content contributions, they have to do it responsibly and not just share what could be a legal issue. As far as the veterans and some of the other populations, our our HR organization, I know, addresses some of the issues that might come up. I don't know specifically around veterans and how we would respond to that, but I'm sure that we've got some policies and guidelines that would be specific to that body of individuals. As far as reporting, we try to create reports that are consumable and digestible and compelling as well. So, brought it up, one of our speakers yesterday is around, it's great to have the reports, it's great to have the information, but if it's not done in a way that they can really access or that's highly useful, it's not going to do a lot of good in terms of driving the behavior change that we're looking to drive. So we put together reports that we try to make as intuitive as we can. We put the leader picture up there, where they exist in the hierarchy, and the type of data that would be feeding into it. It might pull from a lot of different databases and a lot of different sources, but eventually it comes into one single source where an individual can see, here are the contributions, here's where they might be doing very well, here's where they might be falling short, and here might be a suggestion for an overall assessment for that individual's contributions. And so to Rick's point, it doesn't encapsulate every type of contribution. Certainly there's a lot of other ways that they might be sharing their knowledge, but it's something that begins to capture at least, here are the top maybe 4 or 5 ways that they might be contributing knowledge, whether it's uploading content, nominating content, creating rules, submitting rule ideas, participating in the review, the certification of that intellectual capital, participating in a virtual team project, solving a case. These are the types of contributions that we look for and that we can report on. We heard a few minutes ago, and Jay's talk on the importance of reward and recognition. We have a quarterly program around knowledge management, and our executive vice president supports it by asking for nominations, by touting the importance of sharing and transferring knowledge. So we are fortunate in that respect to have that type of senior level support. And this is something that we typically will have recognized in all hands type meetings. There are typically nice crystal plaques that go along with the winners. The team pictures will go up. There's no real monetary aspects, but you'd be really amazed at the level of priority that people will apply and put. They'll take a lot of time to put the nominations together just for the opportunity to be recognized at one of our all hands meetings. And I know we've got a program in play right now, and I was amazed at the number of nominations that have come out just in the last couple of weeks. And so I'll be doing that on my weekend, looking through those. But we do typically see all of the different theaters and functions represented, and it's been something where we're looking for the program to drive behaviors and to drive results. So drive the right capture, share, and reuse behaviors, and then drive the right outcomes for the organization. What are the behaviors that led to customer satisfaction? What are the behaviors that led to employee productivity? And what are those knowledge sharing behaviors that led to a better process efficiency?
Have you had much success with the regular contributors, like leaders, encourage their peers to contribute who might not be?
Can you say a little bit more about that? So peers have...
So I'm a regular contributor, right? I bought into this. I'm contributing to knowledge as far as documents, and I think it might be useful, maybe to encourage my peers, for example, to do this as well. Yeah, we try to keep it as peer-driven as possible, so the nominations typically come from peers. The nominations would be for individuals or teams, so we leave it pretty open-ended. And so we typically see and encourage nominations to come from anybody for anybody. We can't force a nomination for someone to come from their direct peer, but in many cases we might see that. If the person's working on a project and they want that person recognized. But independent of saying nominations, I mean, just this plan is trying to contribute, encouraging my buddy to also do this too.
Right. Yeah, and maybe some other type of recognition, maybe an email or a thank you from a senior person. But something along these lines might encourage that type of behavior as well.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. No need to look through all of this other than just seeing that we track contributions. So when somebody goes into the system and nominates a document or creates a rule idea or helps review the intellectual capital around that, we do assign various points to the different behaviors, and these are all behaviors on the left-hand side, if you will, whether it's submitting or screening or approving or writing the intellectual capital or performing the UAT, updating the intellectual capital. These are all different behaviors that we're trying to drive in the organization. And so we do track the contributions. We do know where we're seeing contributions. And again, it's not every type of behavior that we like to see in the organization in terms of knowledge transfer, but at least it's a start in terms of laying out some of the intellectual capital behaviors that we'd like to see, and then being able to give our systems a chance to let us know where we're seeing the results, compare it against some of the points that we've assigned based on the time typically that would be required for that certain activity to occur, and then we can go back to those teams and say, here are the individuals who have amassed the greatest number of points. We have a wall of fame on our communities page that highlights those individuals with the greatest number of contributors. They amass points both during the course of any year as well as during their aggregate time at the company. And so it's something that we feel, view as important. They tell us the value that they place on it. They see it as something that's really valuable to do, and we really appreciate the recognition that we provide. We also try to just encourage friendly competition between groups, between theaters, between functions, wherever we possibly can, just to try to step up the contributions and the participation. This is just a quick note from one of our executives who responds back on a regular basis whenever we send out update reports and statuses. Nice going. He'll congratulate the individuals who are the top contributors for the week. He'll often just set the bar or ask for contributions from the rest of the team. Look forward to seeing more rules from your areas, and then sign it. And this is something that, this type of support goes a long way. The engineers see it, and he's participating on the call, he's responding to the notes, he's replying to the updates, and this is something that we see as something that works pretty well in the organization, where we can create a little bit of that friendly competition. We might at the beginning of the quarter make a targeted project and say that the greatest number of rules will result in an iPod, for instance. We've provided those. We've given some other prizes. We've given plaques, certificates signed by some of our executives. And again, we're always amazed at the amount of participation and the interest in some of these prizes, which can often just be a simple thank you in an email, but it really seems to get a lot of progress and get a lot of momentum. Success stories also very important. We are expected to add value to our organization. We continually have to justify our existence as an IC team. And so we are always looking at ways that we can show value to the organization in terms of more configuration success, configuration compliance. Contributions to the knowledge base are good, but it really has to, at the end of the day, do something for the customer. So we don't just want a lot of new knowledge in the database. We want it to be applied knowledge that makes a difference towards our customer success. So we have typically during the course of the quarter, we look at teams that have had success working with customers, experiencing a situation where they can solve a customer problem through content or maybe through a rule that was developed. And so we typically will go out and share some of those successes on a quarterly basis as well. And here's what our teams, here's what our communities are doing, here's how they're supporting customer satisfaction, here's how the teams are increasingly becoming relevant in the delivery of our services. Whether it's AT&T or British Telecom or Quest, getting the benefit of that content or that document or that collateral is something that our teams are willing to share when they have that type of success in their organization. And then finally, just evangelizing the benefits, making sure that it's top of mind for the contributors, making sure that it's top of mind for your stakeholders, making sure that they're seeing updates on a regular basis. We have regular updates go out. We have a section called Knowledge Matters in our organizational newsletter. We continue to highlight teams, recognize individuals, show some of the team progress, highlight a new team that's come into existence from a community point of view. And just no substitute for making sure that it's top of mind. It's easy to, of course, an obvious point, but something that's sometimes easy to forget as well. But they need to see that it's making a difference, that it's important from an executive point of view, and that they continue to see updates from the team. Finally, start small. You don't have to necessarily have an organizational-wide initiative. Have something that really works well with a certain team. Go out with a certain team. We've had some success with our team, our services team in India. They've developed a tremendous amount of intellectual capital in a short period of time, and it's a small team. But it's a model that we can take and replicate and to advertise and communicate to the broader organization. So starting small is important for us. The tools approach is never enough, as we've heard over the course of the last couple of days. It really requires an overall framework from some of the people programs, from a process point of view, from Chris's point before lunch, from looking at what is being done to drive an overall program. Some of the incentives that we saw, the recognition programs, are our attempt to really drive that overall approach. Making sure you acknowledge your champions and your stakeholders. We provide T-shirts and other small mementos. It doesn't break the bank, but it really acknowledges them, and they get a lot of value from that. They always thank us and show their appreciation. It goes a long way. And we're asking them to contribute a lot of hours of their time on a regular basis, and it's really a small acknowledgement does help a lot. And just the guidelines as well. Contributors might want to get plugged in, but they just don't know how. Even if you send some kind of communication that might lay it out, you really need to follow up with them, participate in that staff meeting, go out on a road show, and really go out and let teams know that here's how to plug into the initiative, here's the actual sites you can go to, here's how we're reporting success, here's what you're accountable for, here are the expectations, and make sure that they know tactically what needs to happen to get plugged into the overall initiative. Align to a couple or integrate into regular reporting process as well. If at the end of the day you're asking for a lot of knowledge contributions, but it's not being reported, you're not going to see as much momentum or traction as you could. But if it's reported at the end of the quarter, just as some of the other areas are reported, from a margin, from a cash, from a revenue, from a customer satisfaction, from a number of certifications that have come, make sure that those knowledge contributions are also included in those reports, because it's important, it's critical for the business to scale, and those investments need to be tracked on a regular basis, and have those executives really embed the contributions into their regular reporting. Make it a part of every group's all hands. And align to a few of those executives who can really help you carry the message. It won't happen with everyone. You might get a lot of nods from everybody, but at the end of the day, it's not just the nods, but it's the actual going and holding their teams accountable and viewing it not as volunteer work or above and beyond work, but that it's a part of their job. It's an expectation, especially as one rises in the organization, making those contributions and working with the executives who have that perspective, who are willing to take that message out to their teams, who are passionate and have that vocal feeling for it as well. And pick a couple things and do them well. Not to try to take everything on at once, but do a couple areas, work on a couple areas. It might be recognition, or it might be a content management challenge, or it might be some emerging or innovative area, but really try to focus and concentrate and show some progress and traction, and that will, of course, beget future value and success. Keep the program on top of mind for stakeholders. We talked about the importance of that. And believe in your message as well. Passion really does sell. If you really feel the importance of this for an organization and can go out and really bring that out to the teams, they'll see it, they'll hear it, in many cases, they share it as well. They know the importance of this work that we're doing within this room, and that is something that's very contagious. Thank you.
There's some time for some questions. I'm wondering a little bit on with respect to when we are evaluating our COPs, it's always easy to look at the count downloads and things that are mechanical to measure, but we found that you need some sort of a subjective evaluation of what is the quality of the interaction, what is the quality of the input. How do you measure that?
Yeah, there's quantity and there's quality, or as we call them, there's inputs or there's outcomes. And it's easy to show activities. You can show the uploads, you can show the downloads, you can show the number of hours that they've contributed, or the number of knowledge nuggets that they've created. But that's, at the end of the day, that's not going to get you funding on an ongoing basis. You have to show business value. You have to show how that's helping drive productivity, how that's helping drive customer success. So if you can link to those important outcomes, if you can show how those best practice reports are creating higher levels of configuration compliance with your customer, and show some trends that these customers had this number of best practice reports going to them, or this number of rules fired in their audits, and their configuration compliance, oh, by the way, went from A, B, C, and D upwards to the right. That's a step in the right direction. The testimonials as well. It's not necessarily straight, hard, objective data, but if you can get some teams to say, this has really made an impact for me, this content's really worked driving success at AT&T, or BT would not have been the same without this. Our engagement with BT went much smoother than it would have otherwise. That's going to help as well. So it's the activities, to show the activities, but ideally show the teams that can correlate the activities to the outcomes. And if you have a correlation between the teams that have the high outcomes, high customer sat, high revenue, high margin, and oh, by the way, those teams are adopting the greatest number of knowledge contributions, they're doing the most, and start to make those linkages, you'll start to get people to agree that there's a correlation between the two, but it's art and science. Great.
One of the things that I've observed over the years is that if you want people to have to do something to contribute to a knowledge management system, it's one of those things that while you're paying attention to it, it seems to happen, and then it falls off, and then you pay attention to it again, you add awards, and you get some contributions, and then it falls off again. And the consistency on getting good knowledge capture comes from when people take the time to design their knowledge capture system to be part of the flow of the work, the everyday work. So a great example of that is part of the organization that solves problems for customers. If they capture the write-ups, if that's part of what they have to do every day, right? It has to go back into the system to close out the ticket. And then that becomes a searchable database. That's very powerful knowledge, and it grows because of the normal course of business. Did you find that that's true in Cisco? And if so, are you leveraging that to try to design knowledge capture tools that are internal to the flow of business?
Yeah, certainly trying to drive, for instance, the IC Nuggets project to be one that's embedded right into delivery so that teams are taking those nuggets, compiling those in the course of their deliverable creation, and having that be the single source of truth, if you will, for content or for knowledge to go into that deliverable. So that's something that we're really going out to teams and suggesting, this is the best way to create that quality deliverable. This is where the good stuff is. This is where the best content quality exists, where you can go out and create that, so they don't have to go specifically outside of their workflow to get it done. So that's one step of something we're trying to do to really embed it in the workflow, because you're absolutely right. Trying to have it be done outside of the course of their day-to-day business. They're all oversubscribed, they're working on escalations, they're working excessive hours, they're not going to have the time. This is considered investment time anyway, and so they're tasked with having a certain level of billable time that's typically around 85%. And so if it's not given a project ID that's a customer project, they're going to treat that as a second priority. So we try to have the application support what they're doing, but we also try to create a workflow where within the workflow, within the project, the project close would require the uploading of the content so that the project lessons learned, if you will, are being included as a part of the overall transaction before any consultant moves on to another transaction as well. So it's something that we're trying to do to educate teams that, hey, projects don't close until that retrospective occurs, so that the next customer would get the benefit of these lessons learned. But it's a great point and something that we're certainly continually facing.
Hey, Doug. The package sniffers, is that something that you develop in-house, or do you outsource that, or how do you implement a system like that?
So it's developed in-house, and it was an idea that our emerging technology group came up with. We have a group called Emerging Technologies. They have a process called iZone where they take different ideas and develop ideas based on rating of the ideas. And our first slide, the telepresence system came out of that process. And the network packet sniffing technology came out of that as well, where it was viewed that, hey, we own the packets insofar as that's our core competence in terms of being able to have the infrastructure and the visibility into that technology. Why don't we leverage that in a way that could be beneficial and be utilized in an effective way for teams and individuals that opt in? So yes, in-house.
And forgive me, Doug, do you offer that service externally to your customers, or is that?
We are. It's starting with some partners this year, but we are going to be moving that out to some selected customers. I know on a kind of a beta pilot basis, but that's temporary and it's going to be expanded from there. So happy to have any follow-up discussion.
Right.
Yeah.
Does your packet sniffing technology work in such a way that can you get enough that says, okay, Joe moved packets to this file resource on a server?
I don't know that it has
that much
the,
data in the packet?
yeah,
Just
whatever's
source
in the
destination?
packet, including destination and source, would be subject to analysis and capture. So whether that's actually a part of what is captured, I think is probably more related to just the source of, or the type of content, the type of tagging that could be associated with that content. But source and destination, I mean, that's an easy problem to solve,
Sure.
and I'm sure that's easily done.
How is Cisco approaching, as we saw these last 2 days, most of the presentations have been like either testimonials or after the fact, or after a certain gate, or after a certain process. How do we provide what we call like maybe teachable moments during that process stage that allows that continuous learning during the actual process step? So in essence, we do it more of as an ad hoc part of our execution stage for that gate or whatever that process is. How do we find something with the speed of knowledge and everything to design in our systems where those teachable moments are, for basically the team that's working on it, and you also have the general knowledge that may be beneficial for those teams who are stepping back and looking at the overall process. How do we design, or how does Cisco address in their design of their knowledge systems those teachable moments?
Well, it's a tough question. We have I'll go back to the nuggets again as a way to add in insight or perspective, or to add in some commentary about a teachable moment or an opportunity to leverage a lesson learned, and to be able to have that be something that's available to the organization. The rules program as well is something that we really try to have be a source for these kind of moments as well, these kind of inventive ideas or these kind of ways that networks can be improved. So we have some mechanisms today, but I don't know that it captures every type of tacit interaction that you might be referring to, because I sense that maybe there's a tacit element there of maybe a personalized connection, maybe the expert location through our network packet analysis would be able to connect the individuals that might be able to deliver that kind of transfer of knowledge that I'm hearing or sensing that you're referring to. Is it more of the tacit side or more of something that can be codified?
It could be something that's an aha moment. It could be, I know like for instance, the Army does hot washes or something during certain aspects of a process. So how, a lot of the times when we're working in a project, when we're, our heads buried in the sand on a certain particular process, a lot of times we do have aha moments, and then we go on to, sometimes are lost because we do this ad hoc after a long time after these teams have disbanded. So how do we put that as part of our...
We can make it part of our workflow. For instance, ask people to spend a half a day per week. Now, it may not happen every week. They may get pulled into something, but ask them to spend that time so that at the end of the week they can say, I had these moments during the course of the week, or I had these lessons learned. And then they're taking that half a day. It's built into their process. It's built into their planning. They've got it reserved on their calendar, and they can add that as a nomination. They can add it as a content or as a rule idea, perhaps. So trying to systematize it and build it into their schedule and their structure as much as possible might be a way that I think we're trying to address it.
Some kind of intelligent alerts or RSS kind of technology that is reading documented information. If it's in your head, it's going to take a little more effort, but some of these alerting type of technologies might be able to help to get that information out.
We're out of time. Please join me in thanking them for